Welcome back, folks. For this video, I'll be covering two very well-known builds. Throughout the 3 years they've been in play, the meta has shifted immensely, creating some very strong matchups. The first build in question is none other than Ronan Cain. In the TAM map, it's ranked in the top 7, and fares very well on the MCAL servers as well. With solid stats across the board, it's no real surprise that this build has had a successful run in the meta so far. Speaking of stats, let's cover them. One of the highest intels that I'll be covering so far helps this build complete basic tasks involving intelligence on the TAM map and in the MCAL server at large. This also helps in leadership positions, since that's the main playstyle that this build is usually running in the current meta. Strength is a little low, which doesn't help in one-hitting other strong players. This is a really glaring disadvantage with other strength-based builds running rampant in the meta, such as Lucas mains or the ever-present Will Watkins class. What this build lacks in strength, however, it makes up for other stats, charisma mainly. Recent patches have even granted this build with an extremely powerful combo attack with another build on the TAM map. This combo effectively boosts all the player's stats when another player maining the complementary build is in a 10-mile radius. This exceptional combo really helps in covering up the other lackluster stats that this build possesses. Mobility, like all track and cross-country guild members, is very reliable. Although it isn't sky-high like some of the other builds in the track guild, it's very effective in conjunction with its extremely high endurance. Speaking of endurance, this build trades off a few points in other stats for the highest endurance on the current TAM map. This allows this build to keep its fairly high mobility at close to its maximum for extended periods of time, which is extremely useful when trying to outplay builds that abuse short bursts of speed that cannot be held. The bonus stat of health is very passive when it comes to ranking this build, since it only comes into play in very niche situations. Doesn't really affect overall gameplay options. One of the most overpowered abilities in the game, however, is exclusive to this build and one other. Door.mp4 is an incredibly useful sound-based stun ability that renders enemies in a large radius useless for 5 full seconds. Paired with a reasonable damage output, 5 seconds is an extremely long time. Ronan belongs in the A tier. Solid stats, great abilities, and a very good combo options that really let this build shine. A counterpart to this build also resides in the A tier. Like Ronan, Wong possesses very solid stats across the board. A lower intel does hurt a little bit, but the small difference really doesn't hinder this build all too much, especially since speed thinking isn't as useful for a build that usually utilizes a late game playstyle. Like Ronan, a very low strength keeps this build from higher tiers due to it getting bodied by builds that can dish out a serious hit. The one beneficial strength trait it does have, however, is the ability to hold that strength with the highest endurance in the game, tied with Ronan at a whopping 4.5. Similar to strength, mobility is a little low, but gains the same benefits from the exceptional endurance. The combo relationship with another player isn't necessary, but it helps. A relatively average charisma hasn't exactly helped this build in the current or past metas in getting a relationship patch, but only time will tell. Although health is a very passive stat, having a lot of it sure is beneficial to a sleeper build like this one. Having a high health bar means that it has to use less regen potions, which allows the player to utilize the playing time to the absolute maximum. Now, the ability this build possesses is incredibly broken, but it doesn't look like it will be getting a nerf soon. The permanent vehicle ability is extremely effective in conjunction with other players, often opening up other areas and quests on the map inaccessible to players on foot. Overall, a very solid build that I would recommend to newer players who are just getting into the basics of the game. That's all for today, folks. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, comment down below what builds you want to see next.